What's up, guys, and welcome back to Beyond the Void Horror Podcast. My name is Alex, and today, boy, do I have a good one, a bloody one for you. It is the sequel to Becky from 2020 called The Wrath of Becky, and we're going to do a spoiler-free review right now. Now, I got an early copy of this movie from Quiver Distribution. Thank you so much for letting me get a chance to see the sequel of this movie. I was such a big fan of the first one, so thank you. Now, they didn't pay me. They just said, hey, you can review it. No worries. I'm going to give you the honest, full thoughts on the whole thing. Now, I want to make sure that you guys understand this and why I'm going to take a little bit of a long-winded approach to this review. This is a sequel, and I want to compare it to the other films. So there are going to be some tiny spoilers, but I'll keep it, for the most part, spoiler-free. But there are going to be some comparisons. So if you haven't seen the first Becky, I would highly recommend you see that and come back, but you should be fine. So back in 2020, it might have been 2021, there was a movie that came out about a little girl who was with her family and she gets taken over by some neo-Nazis that come to their house. She was a stubborn child who didn't really talk a lot and who basically sees her family get torn apart, and she has to then fight for her life. And boy, was it a very funny, very bloody, very dark comedy that we got to see. A lot of people were calling it the rated R Home Alone. In that movie, we had Joel McHale and Kevin James, who are comedic actors that were playing these roles of some pretty serious characters. And a lot of people were kind of like, what the fuck? This is weird seeing Kevin James as a neo-Nazi? Like, what the fuck? That movie ended on a pretty wild note, and it had a piece that was connecting it together involving a piece that one of the neo-Nazis had. But yes, I loved that film. I thought it was fantastic. A lot of people had issues kind of with the girl. They thought she was a little stiff. Don't worry. She's come around this time in the second one to be a lot more fun, and she's more grown up, so she's much more in control. Both of these movies are definitely a dark comedy. You know, they definitely appeal to horror fans because of the amount of blood and gore and thrills that you're going to get in this movie. So what is Becky all about? Well, we're seeing Becky in the future. This is a few years later after the entire events that unfolded from the first one. She's been thrown into the foster system because of her age, and of course she had to find a new home. And well, she gets out of that situation and kind of goes on her own and tries to live a life that she finds fit. She meets an old woman who takes care of her, and they sort of take care of each other and her dog, Diego. While at her job, she comes across a few patriotic guys that are very Proud Boy-esque, called the Noblemen, who are giving her a hell of a time, and she decides to pull a prank on one of them because, well, Becky doesn't take no shit. And boy, when she does that, they don't take too kindly to it and come back to get her. But this is Becky, and Becky has taken care of a lot of neo-Nazis before in some pretty graphic ways. So what did I think? Well, the beginning of the movie had me thrown off a little bit because I was like, oh man, the acting in this is a little crazy. But I think it's done intentionally so, and you'll know what I mean by that when you see it. So don't worry, that's just the beginning and kind of how she views the world. But when that moves on and she meets the old lady, things get really pretty good. And you know, the character development in this movie is actually very quick and very good. They have another formula again where they're bringing in some comedic actors like Sean William Scott. Yeah, this guy.
You two relax and shake hands. Shake this!
Joe Larson from The Taking of Deborah Logan. Except this one, she doesn't have as big a jaw. Hell, we got Courtney Gaines in here, who I haven't seen. I just recently watched The Burbs, and he was in there.
Why don't you go say hi?
There are some other surprise actors in that movie that I won't spoil for you, but now this movie is directed by a set of new directors. The last set of directors was Jonathan Millant and Carrie Murnian, who did a fantastic job. And now we have Matt Angel and Suzanne Coote, who are teaming up to not only direct, but also write the story of this film. And they are the directors that worked on Hypnotic and The Open House. When these things happen in the movie, these tragedies happen, they really punch it hard, man. And when they punch that hard, it is just like watching John Wick unleash and shoot every motherfucker in the head gloriously over a puppy dog. Very similar to that. I won't spoil anything with this one, but let's just say you're gonna get mad, and it's gonna fuel a dark sadism that is inside of you that you will live vicariously through the hands and fists and glorious weapons that Becky yields. Now, obviously, there is some parallels to the political nature of our world today, and I would say that if you are going to be sensitive to that, I mean, she is taking out a bunch of guys who they consider to be sort of neo-Nazi fascist likes, and they are considered to be overwhelming patriot types who are planning something, and she stumbles across this whole situation. I think you're going to miss out on a good time because, man, boy, does Becky have some good kills in this film. There's a lot of people in this film, too, that I thought were doing really well, including William Scott, who played a very scary, darker version than I've ever seen him play before. Now, it's been a while since we've seen William Scott, and he's definitely not a Stifler in this movie. He is playing it very serious, and I think he does a fairly decent job in this film. It's good to see Courtney Gaines get a little limelight, too, because he's been kind of a character actor in the background for a lot of different movies. And, yeah, it was good to see him in this. He plays the role really well, and he has one of the better scenes in the movie. Jill Larson is fantastic in this film, although we don't see a whole lot of her. It's just good to see her in it because she's a fantastic actor. If you've seen The Taking of Deborah Logan, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. She's fantastic. Lulu Wilson is really good in this. Her characters really come around in this one, and then she's kind of part of the humor in this movie. You know, she was very much so in the first one, but it was a little bit more held into this sort of angsty teenager that didn't really talk. This time, she's a little bit older and she speaks quite a bit. Going to be a little bit more on the comedic side, but I don't think it goes too far. It still kind of tries to balance it a little bit, so it's like, you know, still kind of a thriller, kind of horror movie. You know, when I say horror, I mean suspense, because a lot of people said that the first movie wasn't really horror. Horror fans are going to love this movie. So just like I like Sisu and I like John Wick, Becky is in the same sort of form of that, and boy is it bloody kind of way, and boy is it over the top. It is not the most over the top, but there is going to be some stuff in this film that is going to break a little bit of the barriers of reality. And if you're one of those kind of people that get so upset that this isn't realistic enough, it's going to probably bother you a little bit. I could probably see a few people saying, oh, it's just not realistic. It's not supposed to be, you know, and, you know, to each their own. But yeah, so I really enjoyed this film. I was rooting for it. It's one of those movies that I could see going to the theater and enjoying the hell out of this. It is a little bit on the indie side, but it's also kind of not a small movie either. They do a good job of the character work and the dialogue between the characters and a lot of the humor that's in it. It's very dry humor in some regards, and then also kind of slapsticky in some other regards. If you have any kind of political frustrations on one side of the fence, this is probably going to make you feel really good. I'll let you choose which side of that fence it is, but I think you might get the idea. I think there's nothing wrong with killing a bunch of guys that are out to plot to do something very bad and aren't exactly good people. This is going to have a very high dose of schadenfreude. The characters are going to be characters that you really want to see suffer. And I think that's kind of the fun of Becky in this movie, is that she kind of vicariously lives a life that most of us couldn't. Same thing with John Wick. Same thing with Sisu. If you like those movies, you're gonna like this movie. Is it as big as Sisu? No, not as big. Is it as bloody? Probably not. But is it as fun? Yes, very much so. And I enjoyed every minute of this movie. As it compares to the first film, I think this one's a lot more fun in a way, but there are some scenes in the first movie that I really enjoyed that I didn't get in this movie. But also it kind of feels like, you know, John Wick 2, you know, like the first John Wick was a little bit on the serious side, but the second John Wick was like, let's just have fun. And that's what you're going to have here with Wrath of Becky. I highly recommend going to see this in the theater. And I was already a fan of the first one, so you better believe I wanted to see this one. But this one is very much in line with it. I would give it an 8.5 out of 10, maybe an 8. But it's definitely well within having fun. And I think you will enjoy this film. Is it going to be as good as John Wick? I don't know. Is it going to be as good as Sisu? Maybe. I don't know. I think they're all fun films. And I think that you will enjoy them. If you like what I like and you like a little bloody fun, fun Schadenfreude, then let's get into it. This movie is coming out May 26th, so just a few days. You might even be able to catch it early at an earlier screening or something like that. So, but yeah, what do you think? Have you seen the First Becky? Did you enjoy it? Or were you kind of on the fence about this one? I think this one might be a step in a better direction for those that were kind of feeling a little stiff in the first film, but want to see more anyway, because it's fun to see a kid go around kicking some ass. Is there going to be some unbelievable things that happen in it? Of course, but that's half the fun. Don't let it spoil your day. Anyway, thank you guys so much for coming by. And thank you, Quiver Distribution. Thank you for letting me see this screener early and get a chance to check this one out. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Hit the like button, the subscribe button, the little bell button. It all makes me very happy, and it means a lot to me. So, other than that, thanks for coming by. And as always, long live the void. Join us.